Your sex organs, turn your head to the left, and your body to the right, slowly. Put your tongue in your left cheek and breathe in 6 times. 2. So what here is your face is being pulled backwards and eyes are being drawn that way. On the mouth it's the torque. So it's starting to untorque here. This is going, your eyes are going this way, the mouth's going this way. But you see your chin's up because you don't have as much compression. But you see this torquing line in your head. See that line is coming down and your eyes are more centered to your jaw.
The chin is an overcompensation.
Because
what happens is you have all the pressure like this, so you're pushing up against that. When you take away the restriction, then all of a sudden your head has a habit of pushing back. Does that make sense?
Your neck is longer.
It's like a weight was lifted off.
The body's curving this way, so if you cut off the head, you can see the real difference.
Yeah.
So what happens is literally just that one little bit, your body straightens out, your head's coming, and over time this will loosen up and your head will come back and you'll get another 3/4 of an inch. And because we're going up, you had all that compression in your body, that's stopping the vasodilation or the pressure movement and circulation to the brain. So the reason why you felt more clear is we just literally took the pressure off the brain. It's like reducing the inflammation, but we're reducing it mechanically while the other things are reducing it.
Moving the head is really
Twist the fascia, twist your skin so that it comes up to the center. Both, and then hold it up there and hold it. And then what we're going to do is chin to chest and breathe. 2. Squat, skier squat, and just go side to side really slowly. Okay, awesome, Franco. It's great to have you here. It's been quite the journey. I think the last time that we did anything like this presentation was at the Human Garage. I think it was 2016, maybe?
17.
Early 17, yeah. And we did the first presentation on the PowerCurc and on the Ketoba. And it was a really scientific presentation. And today what we're going to do is we're going to pick your brain and ask some questions about this technology you've created. And it is technology, it's not just a supplement. And we want to get to know a little bit more about it and about you. I'd like you to hear the story. I mean, I know it, I've heard it a couple of times myself, but I'd love to hear the story again for the audience, specifically how this all came about. Like, you were a bodybuilder and you ran into a problem, and that's what started this whole journey off, right?
That's correct, yeah.
So tell us a little bit.
You want to know the story?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I started, so I was doing my undergrad at the University of British Columbia in human nutrition while I was climbing the ladder in the bodybuilding arena. And I was using the laboratories. I had latitude to be able to analyze blood work and determine exactly what was working for me, what wasn't working for me as I progressed towards each contest. So every contest for me was an experimental program that was tangibly analyzed from the standpoint of blood work from month to month as I progressed towards it. So it was very scientific. And I really leaned a lot on curcumin as an anti-inflammatory. At the time, believe it or not, curcumin was relatively unknown. And I was one of the first in Canada in the late 80s to be using it the way I was. And I was using large quantities. The idea was to deliver an anti-inflammatory effect to my body because I was training so hard that I wanted to be able to train more frequently than my competitor that I would see every 2 years, competitors in these bodybuilding shows. So I had assigned myself a 2-year cycle. Most people competed, every 6 months, every year. And I figured that, if you compete too frequently, you know how devastating it is on the body to get ready for a contest. It's just, it's denigrating. So I just began to map out the 2-year cycle and trained hard and delivered whatever supplements I needed to be able to recover as quickly as I could. Curcumin became a staple for me. it worked well. And I had other things I was using as a program that delivered results that were, for most people, that thought it was formidable. I went from Mr. Junior BC as a 19-year-old. First contest I lost, first contest I went into, and then kind of things started coming together based on the analytical work. And I won Mr. BC Senior, Men's, Mr. Vancouver, Mr. Western Canada, Mr. Canada, and then went to Los Angeles and won the IFBB Weider Pro Qualifier. And so the whole time I was an underdog, and I was at the same time doing my undergrad, and I began to collect the data. And after winning the contest, I had actually graduated with my undergrad. But I'm going to step back 1 year before winning that contest, because it sounds like everything went smoothly. And as you know, as you progress, the best laid plans don't necessarily go the way you want them to go. And I was supposed to compete in the Mr. North America contest in '91 and became very ill, and I was hospitalized, and I was bleeding. So at the time, nobody knew what it was. I had this gastrointestinal problem that would raise its ugly head every time I had exams in university. And I thought, well, maybe I'm just, pretty weak at dealing with environmental and life stress. And that was, something that was delivered to me. But eventually it just got worse and worse until preparing for the Mr. North America, which compounded life with more stress, physical and mental. And I ended up being hospitalized, bleeding. I was in there for 4 weeks. And I weighed at the time about 220 pounds, like just massive, like twice the size I am today.
How tall are you?
That's a big guy.
Yeah, I'm 5'7". I was 225. If you think about, like my legs are like 33 inches and my waist is 28.
Yeah.
Arms almost 19 inches, chest 52. Like I was massive. And in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, I'd lost 25 pounds in the hospital, bleeding. Every time I go to the washroom, just piles of blood, and nobody knew what it was. The disease was resistant to any of the corticosteroids that they were delivering, and it turned into a little bit of a nightmare. But I realized at the time, you've got to really, and this is the philosophy today that you're all focused on, you've got to really take care of yourself and really look deep at what's working for you and what's not working for you and what used to work for you and what's changed today to cause whatever's ailing you at the moment. And that's what I did. And in fact, what had happened was for 4 months prior to this adverse event, I had stopped taking the curcumin I was using. Now, this is so early on in the natural health space, because I was in the natural health space advising and counseling people based on my education and personal experience in sports nutrition. But so early on that turmeric and curcumin were never really available all the time, reliably. And there was a world shortage. But I said, okay, you know what? World shortage, I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing. But the anti-inflammatory I was using to help recover from the training was also serving as a mild anti-inflammatory for my gastrointestinal problem that had not really become full-blown at the time. So when I took away this anti-inflammatory, it just reared out of control. Now, here's the thing. I'm using this curcumin extract at about 7 to 9 grams a day. A typical bodybuilder takes so much more of what you think works because more is better. And I mean, nobody today would ever take 7 or 9 grams of curcumin. You couldn't, because it was just almost impossible. The 3 or 4 shakes with curcumin in it, just piling this stuff in for recovery from training, but it was taking the edge off this disease. And when I took that compensatory factor away, the disease just flailed out of control. And there I was, hospitalized. So what had happened was, I went in the hospital. They told me, they have to resect my large intestine, cut it out, because that's the only way they would save my life. I said, okay, wait a minute. I need to go back. I'm going to find this stuff I was using. And it took the edge off the disease after going back and using this compound. I was on the corticosteroids as well that the hospital doctors had prescribed, and that took the edge off. After 3 or 4 months, things seemed to be a lot better. I went back to training, but I was limping along. I was never 100%. Because once it hit that hard, it's just hard to recover from the inflammatory activity. But I went on to win Mr. North America a year later and did my thing, and I said, okay, I did it. I got to the goal. Now I have to figure out what the heck is wrong with me. And what I had done was I was supposed to go do my postgrad right after finishing my undergrad in experimental medicine. And I said, I need to start a company that generates the revenue I need to do this research. So I started a sports nutrition company called Champion's Choice and leveraged the Mr. North America Championship, my education.
I remember the brand. I didn't know that was you.
That was me, yeah.
Because I needed bodybuilder at the same time. That's
Yeah, so that was from Canada.
You didn't
Yeah.
know that was him?
I didn't know. I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Oh, that's
Champion's Choice. So, and that was the first company to ever offer a curcumin-based recovery agent in the marketplace. And what I had done was engineered this compound because I had enough insight knowing which material that I was buying that was working better for me versus materials that weren't working for me to relieve, to take the edge off the disease. Never completely recovered the disease, just taking the edge off. And because I began to market this product, I had to determine with certificates of analysis the actual composition of this curcumin that was coming in to make sure it met specifications. I began to realize that the product that actually had a slightly higher curcumin 3 content. Now, regular curcumin has 3 curcuminoids in it. Most of us go out and buy curcumin, 95%, and say, yep, it's 95, it's pure, it's going to deliver a result that any other 95% curcumin is going to deliver. But what we don't know until you go in deeper is that there are 3 curcuminoids that make up that 95% curcumin. And they fluctuate from batch to batch, from geographical area that grows it to another geographical area that grows it. In fact, I can buy turmeric that comes from China, from India, and from other South American countries, and all of them have different proportions of these curcuminoids because the climate, the earth, the environment, even the insects, because a lot of these curcuminoids are made by the plant to protect itself from the environment, from oxidation, from insect attack. Now, what's happening when an insect attacks the plant and you begin to analyze this archaic biological system that we still have in our cells that we can affect in a similar way, except the dose that the insect is getting in the plant is going to kill it. But for us, it's serving medicinally and a high dose enough that proportionally is heavy enough to the insect's dose it could kill us too. Nevertheless, I go back in and realize that the curcumin 3 loaded product would deliver a result that would take the edge off the disease, and I began to focus on curcumin 3. So I isolated it, took it out.
Right.
And I began to study it intensely to map the pharmacology. Now, the interesting thing is that, we have all these botanicals in the marketplace, and if we use curcumin as the model, they have multiple constituents in them that create this polypharmacology. So this massive pharmacology that hits a lot of different targets in the body. And the holistic approach states, and the philosophy solidifies that this holistic system is required. You need to target multiple proteins that are naturally created by nature to target our natural system in a way that's synergistic. Now, in allopathic medicine, the medical community, that's mainstream medicine today, says, no. We don't want polypharmacology. We want selected pharmacology that targets one protein. And there's validity to that. The reason is that we are better able to control that pharmacology. We know there's less likelihood of adverse events with other drugs because it's selective. So I began to really study the pharmacology delivered by the pharmaceutical industry to determine, how can we leverage what they have done, but still maintain the holistic value of our technology to be able to be accepted in mainstream medicine so that we can deliver this technology to the broader public globally without having to fight through the sludge of allopathic medical resistance. And so I became an island for 10 years. And the island was, I used the pharmaceutical drug research to study each of these different components in the curcumin, 3 curcuminoids. I mapped the pharmacology thoroughly. We had medical discoveries. They've been published in peer-reviewed medicine. And the discovery showed why this was working for me. And once you know what each of these components do, you can actually re-engineer the final product to be more selective for a protein that you want to target while maintaining the underpinnings of the holistic compounds that are required.
So basically what you're saying is you're taking pharmacology and blending it with holistic, and you're using the principles of both to deliver a result.
To deliver now a result that is reliable. So what we've said is, the philosophy at Biologic is, look, we have all looked at natural compounds as effective ways to treat the body to treat disease, to treat human being with disease. The problem is it's not reliable, and it's true. The reason is that we have standardized, if you use the model, we have standardized curcumin as the 95%. Well, we need to go in and standardize by each constituent, because if they change, then the pharmacology changes, because each constituent, although they have a similar biological structure, there are differential features to that structure that render and allow that molecule to have slightly different level of activity. So now what we've done is standardize the proportions of the curcumin. And we've locked in the proportion of curcumin 3 that we know inhibits a protein called MSK1, which is dysregulated in a lot of autoimmune conditions, cancers, and things like that. And when you regulate MSK1 and bring it back to its normal functioning state, then the inflammatory cascade functions more effectively. Now, the cool thing is that we took this model, we were very effective with curcumin, because the PowerCurc is made with the curcumin bio-BDMC that we I guess technologized is like I like to put it.
It's technology.
Yeah.
It's very unique technology. It's not regular curcumin. We had to work with Health Canada for 2.5 years to develop new monographs, new approval processes for something that they weren't familiar with. And we've come such a long way. We've shown now with Health Canada that's now approved as an over-the-counter. We've gone to a 50% for the medical community because it has a more potent effect on MSK1 for diseases that might have other features that are very difficult to deal with. We can't talk too much about disease specificity, but what we've been able to achieve with Health Canada is that we have a powerful anti-inflammatory agent we can claim is an anti-inflammatory agent. And now we've shown Health Canada that variants of this technology that are way more potent than even the over-the-counter are effective, let me just say this, that are great candidates, as Health Canada has put it after reviewing all our research at Biologic, great candidate drug for the treatment of COVID. And we've seen it in our community already, where with COVID, a lot of the adverse events and the dangerous situations that occur with people who are infected occur because there's a predisposition for inflammation. There's an underlying subclinical inflammation because they might have other diseases such as autoimmune conditions, diabetes, things that raise this subclinical inflammatory activity. We've shown in the research that we can mitigate the inflammatory activity to bring it down to baseline activity so that once infected, and I say potentially, we could treat COVID and treat people who are in distress and at risk for morbidity and mortality with COVID. Now, when I talk about COVID, it's an exciting time because, well, first of all, people think, COVID's already past us. And the reality is that we have mutations of the virus itself, and these variants will come and continue to come and ravage society periodically. So we have something now that is going into a clinical trial for the treatment of people in distress based on, this is interesting though, based on the original research that shows it's a powerful anti-inflammatory and has been approved as an anti-inflammatory already. So we're very excited about that because this is not just about being authorized to go into a clinical trial, but it's about validation. Validation for the work we've been doing that has altered this curcumin from the originally accepted state to one that's at a higher level of functionality and is a hybrid of what we do pharmaceutically in the drug industry and holistically in the natural health space, which I've been in for 30 years. And I think it's about time that we bring a new level of credibility for the technologies in general in the natural health space that work. And the fact is, they work, but we just need a more sophisticated way to standardize them so that they're reliable and they work every time you take them, as opposed to a chance that the proportions of the inner underpinnings of these botanicals may work. We've now done this with ashwagandha, and ashwagandha is a different animal in itself, different plant in itself.
I love taking your ashwagandha.
Yeah, it's a great product.
I love it. Yes.
And ashwagandha, as opposed to curcumin having 3 curcuminoids, has 35 withanolides. So we've been navigating through that for the last 3 years, identifying each one, mapping the pharmacology of each one, and what we've found is phenomenal in terms of neutralizing reactive oxygen species, enhancing NRF2, which is a transcription factor in the cell that is responsible for manufacturing or transcribing glutathione peroxidase, superoxide dismutase, catalase. These are antioxidants inside the cell, not antioxidants we would take like vitamin C. That's what I call an outside-in.
Exogenous versus endogenous.
Endogenous. So imagine that. As you age, the endogenous antioxidant load in your cell begins to decline, and you need it to neutralize the exhaust, such as the free radicals that occur when you're metabolizing nutrients and creating ATP.
I thought when I left LA, I became a free radical myself.
Yeah, well, I'm a free radical in my space.
Yeah.
That's
So a quick question here, because a lot of our users, a lot of our base is in the United States, the majority of it, and the rest of the world seems to focus on there. So what is the relationship of Health Canada compared to the FDA?
Well, it's said globally that to pass the stringent regulations in the Canadian program for Health Canada is a real coup, because
Generally, they're stronger.
it's harder, much harder to pass it. So to give you an example,
Because that's the first thing people ask: is it FDA approved? And we're.
but FDA never approves anything.
Yeah, of course it. But
If you notice, it says here, the FDA hasn't approved this and it's not used for diagnosis or mitigation of disease and blah, 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 blah. Now, here's how it works. You can sell something in the US and the FDA will allow it if they haven't banned it. If they haven't banned it.
yeah.
It's a different system. So this is what they call a negative system.
Exclusion versus inclusion in Canada.
In Canada, you're not allowed to sell anything unless they've approved it.
Yeah.
All right? So that's the difference.
So with all of this, there's lots of research, lots of science, and it's obvious that you're doing something completely new in the research and science space. How does that actually affect your mission, your vision? So like, what is the overall global vision for you and your company and Biologic?
Well, since the beginning and after my personal experience, it's been to validate the technologies in the natural health space, or as I've said clearly, invalidate them if we can't find the science. Mm-hmm. Now, if we haven't found positive evidence in terms of pharmacological benefits to a disease pathology when we're studying this, we haven't found it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because we're not the end all and be all. But we can't go ahead and make the claims for something that we expect is going to be functional if we haven't found what is making it functional. So, for example, I'm going to go back to the ashwagandha space, because we've all known that curcumin is an anti-inflammatory. And it's been known the mechanism. It's NF-kappa B inhibition. There's a pathway which I studied in my PhD work, which was my central path of study, is the NF-kappa B signaling pathway. It's responsible for creating the cytokines that elicit the inflammatory response in the body. And there are approximately 150 genes that NF-kappa B transcription factor comes, if you know a little bit of biology, comes from the cytosol into the nucleus, into the DNA, opens up the promoter of the DNA, and transcribes these the messenger RNAs and
basically what you're saying is you're working on the operating system, not the applications.
Exactly. So we're affecting the operating system and down-regulating all the cytokines that are involved in beckoning and beaconing. They are being beacons for the immune system. And so by doing that, we're upstream of any one cytokine that represents the cytokine storm that we talk about in, say, for example, the COVID pathology. So in the COVID pathology, they're saying, hey, we need to neutralize interleukin-6, which is one cytokine. We're saying, wait a minute, the cytokine storm phenomenon is represented by multiple cytokines that create an exacerbated inflammatory response. Why not go upstream to the transcription factor, inhibit it, and now you inhibit the whole cloud?
So maybe let me ask you this. More so the how, why are you doing this? Like, what is the long-range goal for Biologica? I mean, are you looking to be like the biggest natural pharmacology in the world? What is the goal? Like, why are you doing this?
If we become the biggest organization in the world that does what we do, that's great. That's not the goal. The goal is to just to live and step through the journey of step by step, validating or invalidating these technologies so people have the knowledge.
Right. Okay. So basically, taking the way I see it is, because when I talk to you, I mean, I know a lot about the body, but I actually my brain can shut down when I talk to you, because you're so smart about this stuff.
We have specialization and education in different areas.
Yeah, I get it. But it's more about what your vision is like for the world. I mean, you're doing this for a reason. you want to help the world in some capacity. And I think that's our mission. We're literally out there to help the world. And you said bringing education. The education and how things work has been actually hidden, or just not exposed enough. So so your plans to educate and do that is that something? Are you moving towards an education model?
We don't want to be functionally day-to-day educating. We want to be able to do the research that demonstrates efficacy and viability and how you can achieve that reliable efficacy. So here's our philosophy. If you go onto our website at Biologic Pharmamedical, you'll see that basically what we're trying to achieve is this. I believe that the medical practitioner of the future will treat the patient for disease in the most starting from the least intrusive methodology to the most intrusive only when needed.
That's
now,
exactly our belief.
Yeah.
Because when we, like earlier, we went through the fascial maneuvers with you, and we were doing organ reset, which effectively has the same net effect as acupuncture. But again, there's with less intrusion. So basically, you're looking at the same thing. How do we create less intrusion for the greatest result?
Yeah, and in my case, because of the education and the passion and the experience I have in this arena and not in your arena, I'm saying, okay, I know the nutraceutical space for the last 30 years. I know what a lot of these substances do. Let's study the underpinnings of each of these botanicals, the constituents, to determine which one is doing it, so that we can standardize that constituent so that it's reliable every time. And so, so the doctor of the future will have studied naturopathic medicine as much as he studied allopathic medicine. And I say on two ends, this should be the same thing.
Yeah.
But right now, they're two ends of the spectrum. But it takes education in the medical community to be able to appreciate it. This is why I've gone down the path of studying these technologies using, people say, well, why use the pharmaceutical model? Because why reinvent the wheel? The medical practitioners have been taught to respect that model. That is the model they're familiar with.
That's a good point.
Fine, I'll bring this in here, let's go. And you know what? I use your drugs as the positive control. For example, in the study we just did for an erectile dysfunction product, Viagra is the control, positive control, and we use a negative control. For the study that we did.
Are you saying you have an ED product coming
We
up?
do, and it works well.
Oh boy.
And
Hey,
it works.
That's going to be a hard one to get into the market. The competition is really stiff.
It is stiff, yeah. But, okay, to give you another example, we've created a Lipitor analog for LDL management, right? Now, we used Lipitor as the standard and the positive control in the same study that was used by Pfizer, exactly modeled by them to show, hey, just as effective, dude.
That's ingenious.
So, and Lipitor, for people, a lot of people watching this aren't even understand what that is. But so, for Lipitor, we're talking about
Cholesterol management, right?
Right. And
That is a big controversial area as well, because we've had a lot of these pharmaceutical agencies lower the range in which your doctor is going to say, yep, you need cholesterol management. So in other words, lower the threshold. In other words, it used to be here and now it's here, so more people are actually getting prescriptions. The problem is that a lot of these statin drugs have side effects, not for all people, but for many people, that create peripheral pain and stiffness and damage in the peripheral tissues.
That's what we deal with.
And then you guys are dealing with the repercussions of that, right? But they don't say that these statin drugs will deplete CoQ10 in the brain and in the heart. And over 10 years, then you may have a myocardial infarction, you may have a stroke, you may have other things that happen in the brain. The simplest thing is just memory deficit. Why? I'm getting older? No, you're not getting older. You've been on statin drugs for 15 years, right? Yeah. Now, the thing is that there's positive benefits to the statin drug. It's not a bad thing. It's just that maybe curcumin 2, not curcumin 3. Remember, curcumin 3 is what this is built in. Our discovery, which is patented now, shows curcumin 2. As soon as you raise it 45%, works just like the statin drug.
So let's move a little bit out of the technology and let's go back to like how this all came about. So from our point of view, we started using the PowerCurc 50 in the clinical model, and we have the 30 available for the public today. So we tested this over 10,000 patients, and every single person that came in, here was our initial response. So we had a 2-hour treatment cycle, and we would add two PowerCurc 50s when they came in the door. That treatment cycle, the first week dropped down to 90 minutes, and then dropped down to 70 minutes. So we were getting the same results manipulating the body, and in literally 40% less time. So that was the validation that we had, and then we had all these other things like what it actually does to the body. Like what I noticed when I take it, it immediately, like within 30 minutes, my brain starts to clear.
Oh, yes.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Well, we all live, especially as we get older, with different levels of subclinical inflammation, whether you have a functional diagnosed disease or not. And inflammation is just a function of how the body works. Oxidation, for example, and inflammation go hand in hand. As oxidative levels rise in the body, you tend to have an escalated level of inflammatory activity as a response to the injury that the oxidation occurs. And then inflammatory activity propagates oxidation. But that actually, if that oxidation and inflammation is prolific in the brain for whatever reason, there's multiple reasons, then you have the so-called brain fog. It can contribute to that.
So when we did your before and after photos, which we did today, both you and Mike were standing taller, and the shape of the head changed. From our point of view, when we measured that, that's actually reducing inflammation because of pressure. So the average person, by the time they hit 40, is 1.5 inches smaller than they were when they were in college. And that's so just mechanical inflammation because we're a pressurized system. So that's why it has so much effect, I think. And then when we open it up with the maneuvers, then we have inflammation, and we have movement in the fascia as well. That's the benefit I think that we've noticed the best. And then the other part too is
It's instant.
instant.
Yeah, it is.
So
Yeah,
why is it so fast?
Yeah.
Well, I'll try and explain it. Yeah, it's an interesting thing because we are seeing more and more that people say within hours it's effective.
Yeah.
Now, regular curcumin typically takes a few days. And the reason is, I've talked about these two proteins. I'm going to see if I can describe this so that it's easily understood. That transcription factor I talked about, NF-kappa B it's called, it lives in the cytosol. The cytosol is the outer part of the cell. I don't know if you've had biology. You have the nucleus and then the cytosol. And when you're injured, there's an enzyme that breaks down, IKK it's called, I-kappa kinase. It releases the NF-kappa B and it goes into the nucleus. And it's looking for the DNA that it has an affinity for and the gene, the promoter of the gene. Now, until you're injured, this thing is attached to it in the cytosol, or until there's oxidation. And here's the cool thing. If you're not managing oxidation in the cell, it can cause the I-kappa B to be loose. And it then comes in and creates inflammation as you age. It's one of the features that creates the inflammatory activity.
So
as you age.
literally we're getting younger as we take this.
Well, you're combating one of the factors, to put it more accurately, like I'd like to say yes, but from a scientific standpoint, you're countering one of the biochemical effects that occur when you age and that contribute to proliferation of age.
So the way we look at it is the science says exactly what you said. What we say is that we look, feel, and move younger.
Exactly, and it's because you have less inflammation. That inflammation escalates with age. If you go for a run, ride the bike with your grandson or your son, I know I'm going to get up in the morning and I'll be stiffer than he would be, right? Mm-hmm. But I take my BDMC PowerCurc and I'm at par because I'm countering this NF-kappa B adverse event with age with an antioxidant that preserves the integrity of that complex. Now, here's the other thing. This works differently because remember I talked about MSK1. Mm-hmm. So now MSK1 is a different protein altogether. It's a kinase and it's inside the cell. If you picture the cell, MSK is also in the cytosol and in the nucleus. And when this NF-kappa B is released and goes into the nucleus looking for its promoter gene, it's inactive. It has to be turned on by MSK1.
Right. So
MSK1 is like the key.
Block it.
Mm-hmm. It
So
turns
it's
it
not-
on.
Yeah, turn it.
So NF-kappa B is not active. It's translocating into the nucleus, but it's not active until it's turned on by MSK. Now think about this. Regular curcumin just slows down the movement of NF-kappa B. It takes a long time for that to slow down enough that you're going to feel a difference. Our curcumin shuts off the key, MSK1. Boom, done. It's instant.
Okay, so that's why people are having the instant results.
Yeah.
So,
So what happens to the NFK after if there's no key?
There's no key. Now, here's the thing. We're not completely turning it off. The biological system's not black or white.
Yeah.
So what's happening is that, you're turning off some of the MSK1. You can't get it all. So it's still functioning. We need NF-kappa B to function
Yeah.
normally because there's normal functions that occur there, normal activities. But what we're doing is we are taking down the dysregulated levels of MSK1. Now, we're not only turning it off, we're showing that we limit the because phosphorylation is what turns it on. We actually reduce how much the cell is making back to normal levels.
Right. So why would you not be at a normal level? Like what are some
I'd like to
contributing
know that too.
factors to
Autoimmune diseases are known. Some are known to have MSK1 elevation.
Yeah.
Some cancers are known Hodgkin's lymphoma. You guys had someone with non-Hodgkin's
yeah,
lymphoma.
non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yeah.
And what happened to them?
Same thing. It was just that immediately they started having a clear brain, better movement, sleeping better. The mobility goes up, because what our belief is that we're made to heal. The body is, and if it's not healing, it's because there's something in our environment or that's dysregulated.
Yeah.
And movement is life. So once they start moving again and breathing and regulating, then we see the disease start to remiss or
Yeah.
back off.
So, we're not supposed to be making claims for diseases like cancer and things like that because we haven't done the clinical trials. We've seen the results in the public place. And this is why this clinical trial now for the treatment of COVID and respiratory disease is a big one for us, because we're taking a path through allopathic pathways that are acceptable to be able to make those claims legally and say, now, once we go to drug status, then what? Now we have drug status for this variant. Then we go sideways and say, okay, we're doing trials now on these other drugs, on these other diseases.
Okay,
Crohn's
That's
disease,
ex-
colitis.
that's
Because
exciting.
COVID opportunity has created a fast track opportunity to, instead of it taking 9 years, it's taken us 12 months to go into drug status.
right. Okay, so that's cool. So
So what's the difference between good and bad inflammation? Because there's a conversation that
Yeah, well, inflammation is critically important for regeneration of tissue recovery. When you get injured, the first response is an inflammatory response, which then sets in motion a restorative response. And it's important for that phase to occur. Typically, it's a 7 to 10 day phase. More specifically, it's a 7-day max phase. But if it's prolonged, it prevents the restorative phase from coming into play. And that's where it's a problem. If it's amplified because of other diseases compounding the inflammatory activity, it can be a problem. And in fact, this is what's happening with the COVID situation, with people who have other disorders that are already setting the stage for inflammation up here instead of baseline. And then when you get infected, the inflammation goes whoa, up here instead of here. And that inflammation is represented in terms of the terminology you've seen in the public space by the cytokine storm phenomena. The cytokines are the cytokines that elicit the inflammatory response and deliver the symptoms. And they create damage to the tissues that are in and around the vicinity of the infection. And because COVID is now known to become systemic in terms of the arterial walls and how it replicates, that becomes a situation that's pretty much systemic in terms of the inflammatory activity.
So when you guys actually, when you trialed it yourself internally, you did the science on it. It was working with a 30 level.
without black pepper.
Sorry. Well, actually,
this is a good
here.
one.
Yeah, here. So let's
Here's
go.
the
Let's go to like more. We've got a lot of the science out of it. Let's go to more of the practical talk. The first thing is that people say you need black pepper. You need pepper in there. So why is this different again?
Well, the black pepper or the active constituent, the piperine, is said to, and there's studies that show that it enhances the bioavailability not only of curcumin but of other substances that it's added to. This is already bioavailable. When we raise that curcumin 3 level, there's a lot of things that happen that change everything about this. You remember we talked about ORAC value. Regular curcumin has an ORAC value somewhere around 9,500. The ORAC value of this is about 500,000. So it's not even in the same ballpark. This is not even the same.
So basically, one of these, to compare, like one of these pills is roughly 100 times more effective than a normal curcumin, if you look at it that way.
If you're talking about ORAC value, it's about 50, at least 50 times more.
Okay.
Yeah, with ORAC value. When it comes to the inflammatory activity, we've shown significant
So
difference.
basically, what you're saying, sorry, is that you could actually take one of these or 50 of these.
for the ORAC value to be equal.
Right. And that, I mean, that's something that people, because why I like to latch onto that is because the world, when we went and we started marketing this, we spent a couple years testing it in the clinic, and then we went to do the research. And oh my gosh, the research on curcumin was so outdated and all over the place.
Yeah.
And so what you're actually doing is you're creating new research in that curcumin that the rest of the world can use as well.
Well, yeah, and the rest of the world can actually, we've been cited thousands of times. Our research is public and peer reviewed, and it's cited on a weekly basis. I get a notification, ping, cited again, because it's novel ground. And in order for people to take the next step to the next novel, and this is what we do as scientists, we offer what we've done is public now, so that other scientists could say, hey, I have an idea that I may not have had. Let's leverage this platform. Let's go the next step. I mean, we're always trying to go to the next step no matter what.
Yeah.
But we have a team, and our team's limited to our team. Well, the global scientific community is what should be looking at what we do, and they are, because we're making an impact.
So part of it, I mean, where this journey came up, part of it is, the funniest part is how we got together. Because I watched you in 1989.
I wish we had pictures of the two of you.
No, I wasn't on stage with them. We're in a different competition. But I watched you compete. I was in Alberta, and I think it was in Calgary, possibly. Or
it might have been the Western Canadian Championship.
Western Canadian.
So that was Edmonton.
Edmonton. So I watched you because I drove down from Fort McMurray. That's where I was living.
Wow.
Yeah, believe it or not, 40 below zero, 40 above, and so I drove down and I watched you. At the time, I remember watching you saying, "Man, that guy is so good," because you're a middleweight.
Yeah.
And you won the overall.
But remember, the way I operated, I was always on stage as a light heavyweight.
Yeah.
And I had this
Were
conversation.
you light heavy or middleweight at that stage?
I was a light heavyweight, but I made weight class for the middleweight by carb depleting 3 days.
Yeah.
And then carb loading.
Yeah.
You lose 12 pounds in like 4 or 5 days.
That's what I did. I weighed in 199 and competed at like 212 up, and then by the night it was 217. I actually watched you on stage, and I remember very distinctly saying, "Man, I want to meet that guy." And because one day I'll meet him. Here it is, 30 years later, my marketing branding company, which is Wow, which I've worked with. Over 20 years I've worked with him in various companies. He comes up and says, "You got to look at this new product." And he's telling me all about it, and I'm excited about it. And he says, "It'll be perfect for the garage." And then he goes, and I said, "Well, how did this get it?" He goes, "This guy named Franco Cavaleri." And Franco. I'm like, "Franco is a bodybuilder? Franco, were you in Canada?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, you're the guy that I said I was going to meet 30 years ago." And here it is. He came down. We started off. That was part of our journey. It was because it was this serendipitous, to say the least. And what we did with Human Garage is we were building a clinical model, and we were doing in the same way that you're doing with pharmacology. We were bumping heads with other people because we were literally fixing people that couldn't be fixed. And so a lot of other people were getting agitated about it. So we had a lot of flack, a lot of feedback, regulatory authorities coming in, people coming in constantly, which I know you've had a lot of that yourself. And what came out of that though was the most interesting experience is that we'd used it clinically, I'd used it. And for a couple of years. Then I stopped when we shut down the garage because I didn't have my own inventory. I came back into Canada. We started the fascial maneuvers, and then we implemented the PowerCurc when we came back and got together to redo this. And oh my God, it was like 10 times more powerful and more responsive than I remember. And that's with the contrast, using it for years, not having it for 2, and then having it. And that was part of our journey because we tested this out clinically. We had thousands of people that were using it, and we got to see them in real time. So what we saw that they became less reactive in their lives. They had less stress. They felt younger. They were moving more, and it was improving the quality of life. I mean, in your own world, how has this affected you in your own life, like your family? What have you noticed in your own world then?
Well, for me personally, I mean, it changed my life completely. I mean, it allowed me to live a normal life, and Yeah.
Yeah, because you had ulcerative colitis.
Yeah.
And how much do you take? Because it says 1 to 2 tabs a day.
Yeah, for the autoimmune conditions, it probably requires more like 3 to 6 a day. And that's why we're running this COVID trial to get approval from toxicology for that. We know there's no toxicology, but we just have to go through.
You have to go through
We
this.
have to run the proper processes
Yeah.
to gain access to those approval.
So the 12 a day I was doing when I was sitting in the garage, I literally, so there's.
Well,
so,
I've taken between 12 and 20 a day.
Yeah.
So can you
On a
take
regular basis, if I feel the colitis coming on for 2 weeks, and then I'll go back down to 2 to 5 a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you take too much of it?
You can.
Yeah.
I personally, if I speak unprofessionally, I'd say no.
Yeah.
To be cautiously respecting and cautiously respectable about the medical environment, and knowing that there are anomalies out there where people could react adversely with a high dose.
Yeah.
I'd say, you probably shouldn't take more than 4 or 5 capsules a day.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because, everybody has a slightly different genetic constitution, and there are things called SNPs,
Yeah.
single nucleotide polymorphisms they're called, and that causes a sensitivity in you that you may not have,
Right.
and you'll never know it until you push the envelope one day and say, wow, that was not a good thing to do.
That's literally what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
So
Especially
are there any contraindications? Anybody who shouldn't be taking this?
The one contraindication that is mandated by Health Canada is that it can increase bleeding time. So if you're on blood thinners, but the reality is you do have to take quite a bit. You have to take between 7 to 12 pills a day to actually affect bleeding time. But you do need to be cautious because, again, you've got those
So, but
individuals that
other
might
way-
have a SNP associated with.
So we get a lot of questions from our audience. So I'm taking these drugs. I'm on these. Is it safe to take? And generally, what my answer to people is, yeah, it's safe to take. What we're doing is we're helping those drugs work better.
In some cases, but I think the safe way to go from to again respect the medical community and the protocols is to say, look, you have a prescribing doctor.
Yeah.
The only person that knows your condition as
Yeah,
well
we do that.
as you do
Yeah.
is your doctor.
Yeah.
And so, take it to your doctor, ask him if it's going to be okay, because, from a distance we can speculate, but, when you're in the situation, it's better to have the prescribing doctor evaluate that.
We
Yes.
literally do that. I say to people, my general response is here's what we say about it, but here's how I use it, and here's what
Yeah.
other people have done.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right. I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but in my experience, we've used it with almost every autoimmune medication, every pain medication, and we've used it in practice in conjunction with people taking it to their doctors. And we have thousands of cases of people with 0 contraindications. So we haven't had one contraindication. We had one person that actually said they had troubles taking curcumin, and the question is, would they have troubles taking this? And in the case, they didn't. So they actually had troubles taking normal curcumin, but they didn't have troubles taking this. Would there be a reason for that?
I don't know that there'd be a reason. I know that there are people that sometimes get a bit of an upset stomach. This is so isolated. We just say, what, if you do, take it with food.
I've never had one person say that in a place.
There have been a lot of questions about, can you give it to your dog, for example?
Yeah, we do have a dog version of it.
Oh, you do?
And it works amazing.
Yeah,
It works
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
yeah.
For skin disease, coat
Yeah.
issues, because even histamine response and an allergic reaction
Yeah.
is exacerbated by inflammatory activity. You take away the inflammation,
So you're actually
you reduce the intensity.
so people that have wildly inflammatory reactions to like pollen and stuff like this, that's just helping. It's not getting rid of it. It's just helping by reducing the level.
Taking
of
the edge off.
response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so for general use, 1 to 2 a day. If you've got something that's a little bit more extreme inflammatory wise, you take 3 to 6. And for how long? Like, are we looking like 28 days, 90 days? Can you do it?
I would say, do a saturation dose for 3 to 5 days, which would be your higher dose, and then you go back to your 2 capsules for the rest of the month.
Yeah.
And then every month, do a saturation dose for 3 or 4
Well,
days.
that's actually
That's a
good.
really good
Because
idea.
because this way you're taking the edge off of the inflammation, and then you're
Letting
maintaining
your body
you're
habituate.
maintaining it, right? And giving your body the chance to maintain it on its own. Right?
That's actually a really good idea, because what we teach people is that the stress habit cycle of the human body is 28 days. And that's why rehabs are 28 days, is to break the habit. So that makes a lot of sense, because we say that within 3 days, we shift perception, and then the next 25 days that perception is integrated.
You need to maintain it in order to integrate it. Yeah.
So is there okay, so that's for, the saturation if I want to really hit something, but what about performance? Like if I want to study, or I want to play sports, or I want to run a marathon, is it better to do more before that?
Yeah, I would, often if I'm going into a heavy duty sport or activity that's atypical for me, I'll take 2 before and then 2 right after, and then leave it at that.
Cool.
Yeah, we've definitely.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah. So what does your routine look like for these in a day? Do you take some in the morning and some at night, or?
I usually take 2 to 4 in the morning and another 2 to 4 at night for a little bit. Yeah.
And our mission, our goal is, we have technology, which is the fascial maneuver technology, and what it underpins it. We chose not to process patent it or anything. We chose to just give it out to the world. We believe that the world, and we're seeing the results now with tens of thousands of people doing maneuvers and testimonials every day that it's working. What our goal was to, like, in particular, what we use is because all of our education and content is free to everybody. And we have like thousands of doctors, medical doctors, chiropractors, physical therapists that are using it right now. So the way we fund ourselves is actually by using products like this. And we have some other ones coming up with you.
Yes.
And what we do is we have a really good price for this. It's $60 US, but what that does is it allows us, what we're doing is we're moving into countries like South Africa, where the dollar is 12 to 1. And so we have the America that funds it. And then we can actually, because to sell it, basically a bottle of this costs over $700 if we were buying it in South Africa. So we're actually selling it for, we're moving to sell it to markets like that for $6 or $7 or $8, which is obviously way below the cost. And so we're using this as a way to saturate, to get it out there, to help people. And you have that's our mission. And you have other products. We had, the next one we had was the Keto Fuel, which is a ketogenic product.
It's an amazing
It's
product.
awesome.
Yeah, and
If I don't take it one day, I notice the difference. I'm just not my impactful self.
Yeah. What is the biggest thing you notice?
Biggest thing I notice is I literally, it's kind of odd thing to say, but you feel like you're walking taller and
Yeah.
you're walking stronger.
Yeah.
And you feel like a force. And without it, you feel good, but you just have a next level mentation.
yeah, and so that product originally was brought in for ketogenics, because it takes away the keto flu that you get, but it moves past there. It actually puts the body in ketogenesis within 20-30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Can you
But the difference with that ketone is that we have a patent on this technology where there are regular beta-hydroxybutyrate salts out there, and that's the exogenous ketone. We take butyrate, the short-chain fatty acid, and it's coupled to the BHB. And the reason is that tells your liver, that butyrate tells your liver to make more ketones from your fat while you've taken this supplement. Now, what's the benefit of that? What's training your body to make the ketones for your brain. And your brain can use the ketone to make more ATP than it can with glucose, using less oxygen. So if you're involved in physical activity, you can see what happens. You need less oxygen, heart rate doesn't get taxed, but you make more ATP for the brain.
So
Means
that's why when
you're automatically fitter. Just boom, right
Yeah,
there.
I gave to Ben Greenfield before a Spartan race, and the first thing he said, which you have the clip of, which is that's just like rocket fuel. And
You did say
so we're gonna do a full other talk on this, but I want to. There are some products we have coming up. We have the Keto Fuel. We've got the Glyvia, which is the sugar substitute,
Which is really good.
which is really good.
It tastes good.
Helps clear blood sugar too, so it helps manage
It
blood
helps
sugar.
manage blood sugar while giving the sweetness, and it works like crazy, and it tastes great. And we've got the chai tea that we'll be coming out with, and then we have the ashwagandha.
Which I love taking.
The ashwagandha is
I enjoyed that a lot.
again, it's just like taking curcumin compared to this. Your ashwagandha is like a super steroid ashwagandha.
It's like, oh yeah, well, you feel focused. For me, the biggest one is the ketone. The only way I can explain it for the average person, whether you're active or not, you don't have to be active, you don't have to be on a special diet, but it's me, for example, sitting here like this versus on the ketone like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not aggressive, but it's just your personality.
focused.
You're just like everything at the same time you're aware of.
So we're
I can see her smiling, I know she's smirking, and I'm not even looking there, but everything is there in front of me.
So we're just teasing people with these products because we're going to be coming out with these, and what we see is the partnership is we have the evidence in the marketplace of the use, and we have an audience that wants to help themselves, wants to share with others, becoming educated, and in the tunes of tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands soon. And so what I like about our relationship is that you're doing science, you're creating products, and you got the biggest testing lab in the world. It's like, because we have people that are willing to voluntarily share their stories and their experiences and share their lab work and stuff like that. So I'm really excited about being able to build this relationship with you. I mean, we've been doing this since like 2017, so that's like 5 years that we've been around this idea. And I said when I listen to you, I said what you're doing is going to change the world, and it literally is, and we feel it today.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're excited to be working with you and being able to convey our message, our products, and change people's lives in your network. I mean, it's an amazing opportunity. I want you guys to take the time and come down and do this in our lab so that we can show your viewers where the rubber meets the road in our laboratory.
Love
Drug
that.
research.
Absolutely.
Did we run you through the lab last time you were there?
Yeah. I want people to see that stuff because it's like for the rest of the world, it looks like a supplement brand that you just go buy in a store, but there is no buying in the store, and this is patented. You're not getting it from anywhere else, and that's what's cool. And we're gonna have this, like, we're shipping now to, I don't know, something like 60 countries or something like that, but we're gonna actually have distribution in a lot of other countries to really get this out there, because I have my personal experience, and I believe that right now, because of the world, because of the stress, because of the vaccines and the COVID and all the other stuff, their nervous systems are just overtaxed, and it's causing all these inflammatory responses. And we believe that doing the fascia maneuvers, which reduces the stress in 15 minutes by 75 to 90%, and then using this on top of it, it puts the body. Fascia maneuvers are putting the body back into a healing state, and this is actually doing the healing, or the other way around. This is taking and putting the body in a state where it can, and then we're doing something with the body, moving it, and it's healing. Like, we honestly believe the body was meant to heal itself, and and that's what we're just doing anyways.
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, the way I see this is that we reach such a state from the standpoint of our nourishment, our food, our environment, and the stress load put upon us to perform and survive, that we are all in a pro-inflammatory state.
Yeah, the whole world
feel
is.
it clinically or not.
Yeah, because people say to me, they say, well, what if I don't have inflammation? I'm like,
Yeah, you have escalated inflammatory
Everybody
activity
does.
beyond, especially now, you get to age 40, that becomes then a dysregulated system. And I view these things as countermeasures to put you back in alignment to how you're supposed to perform.
right, when we're in alignment to performance, then we're moving, and moving is the cure. Yeah, I mean, basically, what we say to people is, movement is the way the body fixes itself, and the most basic movement is breath. And even the constriction of the fascia around the rib cage controls the amount of oxygen that I can bring in. And that's why when we take the PowerCurc, instantaneously we breathe deeper, because it's reducing all the tension around the lungs, the restriction.
We have more questions?
I think we're
More
good.
questions?
I know, I think,
Okay, great.
well, we have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
We can take some questions from the audience. too.
Yeah, Ikwe, is there anything?
People are asking when it's gonna be ready.
When did they order it?
Yeah, because we're out of stock. So I think, is it this week?
Well, we just did QC on it's probably, I've got to check with Vrushali because she's on the QC, but I'm thinking that the next order is ready middle of next week. It's
There
between
you go,
Tuesday
middle
and
of next
Wednesday.
week.
Middle of next week, perfect.
Yeah.
And then we ordered more, so we're not ever out of
So
stock.
we have orders in ahead. Like, I'll tell you, we are constantly running. We have 4 facilities
Wow.
2 in Canada, 2 in the US, that are manufacturing our technologies on a perpetual basis. And one of them has actually put a new, a completely new division in there for us and running our stuff full time.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Any other questions there?
Well, I can't thank you enough because it changed my family's,
Oh, great.
people in my family. It's changed their lives. Like it's
Same.
It's awesome. Yeah,
You're very welcome.
so
And
Yeah,
my parents,
I
my
mean,
parents are 80 and
Yes.
and 79, and without this they're 190. You know? It just changes
Yes.
everything.
My father was going through large intestine cancer,
Yes.
colon cancer. Going through colon cancer, went through treatments, and his sight, his movement was going down. He's having night sweats every night, and literally within days, he's up moving. Night sweats, and so in my personal life,
Yeah.
this has made such a difference for my father, who's dealing with cancer. His whole life has just changed. As a matter of fact, he messaged me last night and says, "I only have 7 days left." It's like, yeah, I only have 7 days left. So in other words, he's like, come on, let's get this
Yeah,
going.
we're the dealers of the 20th century.
And if you come one day, if you come by and we go to the manufacturing facility, it's just pumping out these capsules, and then it's just orange stuff flying
everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so that's a good one too. So if somebody stains, because
If you have a brand new silk comforter that's white and somebody accidentally spills
it
on it,
Yeah.
have to give it
Yeah, you had
out.
a good idea.
So Mike said lemon juice.
Yeah, you have
Lemon
to
juice.
reduce the pH, low pH, lemon juice, stuff like that, vinegar.
Yeah.
Lemon juice is the
Oh,
best.
I didn't think
Yeah,
of
we
it.
got a question.
Yeah, is this product safe for vegans?
Yes,
Yes,
it's completely
It's all
vegan. Yeah.
vegan.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. All
We're
right.
good.
Okay, well, Franco,
my pleasure.
honestly, this is the first. We're gonna do more because we're gonna talk about the keto fuel. We're gonna talk about the ashwagandha, and each and every one of these is gonna provide some basics of understanding both scientifically and usage-wise, which we want, because we want the science. A lot of our bases is doctors and therapists and physical therapists and
Natural.
naturopaths and medical doctors, and we have a lot of people that just want to use it.
I just
So
want to feel good.
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to feel good. I want to thank you for everything you did, and also for having the belief in us to get this out and get this message out. We have a really wild way of getting a message out with an educated audience, and your belief in us has been really important, because we had to start this whole machine over again after we left the United States, and we were having a lot of the same experiences you were. Being pushed back by the community in which we worked in.
Well, it takes a lot of power and a lot of energy to overcome that. So congratulations. Yeah.
Okay,
Awesome.
thank you so
Yeah,
much.
appreciate
We
it.
really appreciate it.
Yeah.